tweets ignite society. Statuses begin battles. Everyone has an opinion. No one wants to surrender. We bring the cold hard facts. We are calling for a ceasefire.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on part 2 of this ceasefire moment of a Christian walk with Passover. We're going to pick up right where we left off, and we're going to start piecing together some scriptures that tell the story of the Passover week from the Bible. One thing we need to remember when we're reading things in the Bible, there are several calendars in play. There's the creation calendar, which starts in the beginning in Genesis 1. God called the light day, and darkness he called night, and there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. God set them in the vault of the skies to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. There's a saying that night came before light. A day consists of night first, starting at sundown, and then day. So sundown to sundown is one day. The beginning of a new month is in conjunction with the new moon. Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. Some Jews follow this method. There's also the Roman calendar. A day starts at midnight. This is the one that we're most familiar with today. When the sun sets and the moon rises, doesn't matter. A day starts at midnight, and days share darkness. So from 8 o'clock at night until midnight is one day, and then midnight until dawn is another day. So they share a darkness. So this is midnight to midnight is one day. There's also Babylonian and Jewish leader calendars, where they say the new month begins with the sighting of the first crescent new moon. The thing with this is it's the first sighting. So if it's a foggy night and someone doesn't see the first crescent moon, it won't start until the next night. This one is difficult to go back and trace in history. There's also the way that days are counted. So in ancient times, they counted from the day something started, and started with 1. They didn't start with 0, they would start with 1. If we were counting in ancient and we went from Friday to Sunday is 3 days. It'd be Friday 1, Saturday 2, Sunday 3. For us, a lot of times we would just go, okay, so we're already in Friday, so that would be Saturday and Sunday, it'd be 2 days. If you started right before the new day began, it's still counted as 1. All right, so let's jump in to walk through the week of Passover. I'm not going to go through every single thing on these pages. I'm pulling them up, so if you wanted to pause the video, you can take a more in-depth look at my notes for that day. It was starting on Saturday night to Saturday light, based on creation calendar, the 9th of Nisan. This is the first thing that we see recorded in the scriptures, where they say 6 days before the Passover. Here's the 10th of Nisan. Now, on this particular day, the lamb was being chosen. It was a perfect male, and this is the same day that Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem. So he was chosen by the people. This is Sunday night to Sunday light. Christians know this as Palm Sunday. Jews know this as the selection of the lamb. This was a foreshadowing. In the Torah, it tells them how to select the lamb. It has to be a lamb, it has to be a perfect one, it has to be male. And the people would have come up out of Jordan on the 10th of the first month. It would be the same day that they were set free on that day. But you can take a look at all of the different scriptures and what happened on that day. There's quite a bit that happened on that day. This is the 11th of Nisan, Monday night to Monday light. There's no significance to Christians on this particular day. Tuesday night to Tuesday light. Again, no particular significance. Wednesday night to Wednesday light. Now, what I found interesting when doing my studies about this particular day, the chief priests and the scribes were looking for a way to arrest and kill Jesus. But what's interesting is Caiaphas, the chief priest at that time, made this statement that he said, "It is good for us that one man may die for the people." He said this not of himself. He did prophesy that Jesus was about to die for the nation. I just thought that was interesting because I had never really noticed that in all my studies before. Here we're in the 14th of Nisan. For Christians, we call this Maundy Thursday. It's when we picture Jesus washing the feet and the Last Supper, but it didn't take place on this particular day. For the Jews, it's called a day of preparation for Passover, where the lamb is sacrificed. The blood was originally placed on the doors in Exodus, and the Passover meal took place at midnight. It is recorded that the blood was placed as a sign on the houses, and that God saw the blood, and that he passed over them, and that a plague was not for their destruction as he went through and smited the land of Egypt. He told them that this day should become a memorial to them, and it was one law to the native and to the sojourner. Even those who were traveling with the Israelites were considered covered by the blood. I'll just do a quick scan down through here so you can see all my notes. Again, if you pause the video, you'll be able to read them more clearly. Now let's get to the 15th. So on the 15th, this is a Friday night to Friday light. For Christians, we would call this Good Friday, and it would be focused on the crucifixion. For the Jews, it's called unleavened bread. This was the day back in Exodus 12, which was a memorial to be kept from generation to generation as an everlasting ordinance, a day to remember how Yahweh had brought them to freedom. The Passover meal, which Christians have come to call the Last Supper, happened this evening, and it was where communion came from. Now I want to take a look at these two particular things. Let's take a look at the Last Supper. If you do a search, and I use the NIV version of the Bible for Last Supper, you'll come up with 3 results. However, none of those results actually have the words Last Supper in them. They are all referring to Passover and the Festival of Unleavened Bread. So the Last Supper is not in the Bible. Communion, and if you do a search on communion in the Bible, one reference will be returned, and it's a reference to the cup of thanksgiving in a discourse on fleeing from adultery. Notice once again, it's talking about other gods. In order to understand what I mean by that, you might want to watch part 1 if you haven't already done so. The verse is not the cup of thanksgiving for which we give thanks a participation in the blood of Christ, and is not the bread that we break a participation in the body of Christ. Communion is not in the Bible, but do you know what the cup of thanksgiving was? Believe it or not, it was one of the cups that was used in the Passover meal. So Christians have called the Passover meal the Last Supper, and the act of communion came out of the Passover meal elements. But there were 4 cups that night: cup of sanctification, cup of plagues, cup of redemption, and the cup of praise. Any guesses as to which Jesus held up when he said to do this in remembrance of me? It happened to be the cup of redemption. This is also known as the cup of blessing or the cup of thanksgiving. Many believe the cup of redemption is the one that Jesus held up because in Matthew and Luke, they indicate that it was taken after the meal, and that's when the redemption cup was taken. This cup represented the slaying of the Passover lamb. The lamb's blood covered the door of the Israelites, and their homes were passed over. The firstborn in their household were spared, while those without the lamb's blood were killed. When he held this cup up, he said, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood, that of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many on the forgiveness of sins." We don't read the word renewed in a lot of our translations. A lot of them will say new covenant, but it's actually the renewed covenant. And what was the renewed covenant? In Daniel 9, we can actually find the answer. It's written, and this is the TS 2000 version, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the middle of the week he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering. And on the wing of abomination he shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste." By becoming the once and for all blood sacrifice, Jesus ended the slaughterings and meal offerings. There would be no more requirement of sacrifices and offerings. The law was still intact, but not the offerings. That is why in Matthew 5 that Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will be any means disappeared from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." What's meant by surpassing their righteousness is that they were keeping the law, but they didn't have the hearts behind what they were doing. Let's take a look at the bread element. And the bread element, they all knew what the bread meant. It meant the cleansing of sins and cleaning out the leaven from the households and getting rid of sin. Incidentally, not understanding the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we wouldn't understand what Jesus had done earlier in the week. If we flash back to the story of Jesus turning over the tables, when Jesus was overturning the tables in his Father's house, the Jews were cleaning the leaven out of their houses. Ponder that one for a moment. Other events that happened on the 15th would have been that at dawn, the first lamb of the daily sacrifice would have been tied to the altar. At 9 a.m., the first lamb was sacrificed. At noon, the second lamb of the daily sacrifice is brought out and tied to the altar. And at 3 p.m., the second lamb is sacrificed. If we look at the events that happened to Jesus on that particular day, at 9 a.m., they crucified him. Between noon and 3 p.m., darkness fell. And about 3 p.m., Jesus cried out and gave up his spirit. The veil of the most set-apart place was torn, giving access to everyone now that the sacrifices had been once and for all fulfilled. The most set-apart place is the more accurate name of the Holy of Holies. The earth shook, rocks were split apart, and tombs were opened, and bodies came up. He had truly set the captives free. The 16th was a Saturday night to Saturday night. There's no significance to this for the Christians. However, for Jews, it was the Sabbath day, and therefore it was all about rest. Christ rested in the tomb on the Sabbath day. And on the 17th is Sunday night to Sunday light. Christians call this the Resurrection Day. Jews call it First Fruits. We'll pick up there whenever we next meet, because First Fruits is another one of God's appointed times. And what do we know about God's appointed times? These shall be a sign to you on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes, that the Torah of Yahweh is to be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yahweh has brought you out of captivity, and you shall guard this law as an appointed time from year to year. Thank you for joining us on this ceasefire moment. We hope you've learned something.